All right. Good morning, guys. Happy Monday. Thank you for logging on to my YouTube page and checking out this video. We don't have nearly as much to talk about with this last part of cell transport. So, as a biology department, we kind of decided that we would just do a recorded video as opposed to a live lecture because there's not as much really to talk about. So thank you for logging on and watching this. Just want to kind of give you a heads up about some things that are going on in class before I get started with the material. Number one, you have the new weekly agenda posted in our daily agenda folder on Schoology. So make sure that you check that out and get an idea of what's going on. In our Unit 3 materials, you're going to see a couple of new things. Number one, the recorded lecture discussion questions for this video. So make sure that you do that after you've watched the video and taken notes. And number two, there are some practice and review questions covering passive and active transport. So it's important that you take some time to do those as well. Okay, make sure that you look at the weekly agenda to get an idea of when those are due, or pay attention to Schoology because the due dates are in there as well. Okay, last thing, semester exam study guide is now posted in the semester exam folder on Schoology, so you can go ahead and get started with that. Work on that in the background over the next week and the first couple days of next week to kind of get yourself prepared for the semester exam. Plenty more to come with that as we move through this week. So let's go ahead and dive right in. I'm going to share it while I'm sharing my screen with you. I'm going to go ahead and go to a PowerPoint and we're going to start talking about active transport. So let's do it. All right, active transport. Last week, we talked about passive transport. We talked about the cell membrane. So with this today, we're going to talk about this last little bit of cell transport, focusing in on active transport. So on your screen, you should be able to see that active transport is going to be similar to passive transport, but also different in a very, very big way. How is it similar? With active transport, materials are still moving into or out of a cell across the cell membrane. So this is still the movement of materials into and out of a cell. How is it different? Look there on your screen, the first bullet point, underline it, circle it, put a mark next to it. Active transport requires energy from the cell. The cell must actually do something in order for active transport to take place. Okay? With that, materials are going to move from an area of lower concentration to an area of higher concentration. So we think of this as, right? Let's use our example of the canoe or the kayak in the Ohio River, right? Throw your canoe or kayak on your shoulder, you walk down to the Ohio River, you throw that bad boy in there. For passive transport, you're just riding in the canoe with the flow of the river. Doesn't take you any energy. You just kind of flow with the way the river is going, right? The current. For active transport, you're now going to turn around and try to row against the current back up the river, right? Moving from an area of low concentration to an area of high concentration. That's going to take some energy. It's going to be much more difficult to do that. All right, so with active transport, it requires energy, and the materials are going to move from an area of low concentration to an area of high concentration. In order to do that, most of the time, cells are going to have specialized protein pumps in the cell membrane to take care of the movement of materials via active transport. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at 3 different examples of active transport and talk about where we might find those and why they are important to living organisms. So here we go. Here's a picture of the cell membrane just to give you an idea of what this might look like. Again, we have our phospholipid bilayer, our little yellow heads, and our kind of brownish colored tails. Embedded in that cell membrane, we have all of these different types of proteins, all right? And it's during active transport or with active transport, we're going to see that these proteins are incredibly, incredibly important. All right, so our first example of an active transport mechanism is the sodium-potassium pump. Okay, so what is the sodium-potassium pump? It is a specialized protein. All right, it's a specialized protein in the cell membrane of animal cells that moves sodium and potassium across the cell membrane. All right, it requires energy because it's active transport, and it's actually going to move sodium out of the cell and potassium into the cell. All right, why is that important? Your nervous system works as a result of tons and tons and tons of sodium potassium pumps. So as you sit here right now, watching your screen, listening to my voice, holding your pencil, it's because of sodium potassium pumps that you can do all of those things, right? Your eyesight, your sense of hearing, okay, your sense of touch, all of those things work with your nervous system. So it's very important that we have these active transport sodium potassium pumps so that our nervous system can work. All right. If we didn't have them, if they weren't working properly, your nervous system wouldn't work properly, and that would be a bad thing. Okay. So let's check out a quick little video that I have here for that. So this is cool. This is going to show kind of how your nervous system works. So let me close that out there. Check this out. So here's some neurons right in your nervous system, and those are messages. And what you can see are these materials moving in and out of the cell. And the way that those move is via sodium potassium, right? So every single time that you send a message in your body from your brain to somewhere else, like or from your eye to your brain, or from your ears to your brain, or your fingers to your brain, you're using those sodium potassium pumps to send those messages, and they're active transport mechanisms. All right. Our second type is something called endocytosis. All right, so let's kind of break this word down. Endocytosis. Let's start with endo, the prefix. Okay, endo means into. All right, so endo means into. Cytosis means cell action. So this is cell action, cytosis, that brings materials into the cell, endocytosis. So what is it? It's the process of moving large molecules or large amounts of material into a cell. How does that work? The cell, check out this picture down here. The cell physically pinches off part of its cell membrane to engulf the materials so that they now become a part of the cell on the inside of the cell. So you can kind of see how the arrows are pointing in. So all of these red materials out here, the cell is literally going to pinch off part of its cell membrane and engulf those materials so that they become a part of the inside of the cell. There's two basic types of endocytosis: pinocytosis and phagocytosis. Pinocytosis meaning the movement of just water into the cell, right? It's basically cell drinking, all right? Pino, to drink, cytosis, cell action. So it's like drinking cell action. And phagocytosis means moving dissolved particles, food, into the cell. Cytosis, cell action, phago, to eat. So it's eating cell action. All right, pinocytosis and phagocytosis are two types of endocytosis. So a reminder, this is active transport, so this process absolutely requires energy. Okay, and our cells do this. Lots of cells on planet Earth do this to move materials into the cell. So let me give you an example. I'm going to show you another YouTube video here of an actual organism doing endocytosis. Okay, so here we go. This is an amoeba. So an amoeba is a free-living, single-celled organism that has to be able to eat. It has to be able to move materials into the cell. So check this out. You're going to actually be able to see this amoeba eating or doing endocytosis via this video. Okay, so here's the amoeba. All right, it's a big single-celled organism. All of this is the cell membrane. All right, so all of this surrounding the amoeba is the cell membrane. Inside, you have a whole bunch of different cell organelles and all of that stuff. I want you to focus right here. All right, right here. So what you have is a little itty bitty bacteria. All right, and this amoeba is hungry, so it needs to kind of try to get this bacteria inside the amoeba so that it can digest it and turn it into energy. So check this out. So the amoeba is going to send out its cell membrane around that bacteria. You can see the materials inside the cell, the cytoplasm and all those organelles moving out. The cell membrane is physically going to surround it and then pinch back together. So now you have the cell membrane, which is pinched together, and you have this nice little vesicle right here with this bacteria inside. And up to this point, the bacteria is like, no big deal. I'm just going about my business. But then, it realizes that it's stuck inside of this vesicle, inside an amoeba. So that vesicle will bond with a lysosome. You'll get some digestive enzymes inside that, and then that bacteria will be broken down, and the amoeba will be able to digest it and eat it. How cool is that? Amoeba doing endocytosis. All right? And then our last type of active transport is the opposite of endocytosis, which is exocytosis. So cytosis means cell action. Exo means to leave or exit. So it's exiting cell action. So what is exocytosis? It's an active transport mechanism where large materials or large amounts of materials are moved out of the cell. So what happens is the cell fuses these materials that are inside, fuses that vesicle with the cell membrane, and then that vesicle opens up to the outside and the materials are released from the cell. So if we think about cell organelles, the Golgi apparatus, which is like the FedEx or the Amazon of a cell, that's how the Golgi apparatus packages and sends materials out of the cell. It uses exocytosis. All right. And another quick reminder, this is active transport, so it is going to take energy from the cell. The cell's going to actually need to do something in order to fuse this vesicle with the cell membrane and release these materials out of the cell. Okay, so just like we did with the sodium potassium pump and endocytosis, we're going to check out a video here with exocytosis so that you can see an example of what this looks like in real life. So now we're going to look at a paramecium, which is just another type of single-celled free-living organism, and we're going to be able to see an example of exocytosis actually happening in this paramecium. So here we go, super short video. So on your screen here in a second, you're going to see a paramecium. All right, so this right here is a paramecium. All right, now hopefully I can. Okay, I'm going to move this out of the way. Okay, so here's a paramecium. We're going to focus down here at the bottom of the paramecium. Hopefully that'll get out of the way. Okay, so look down here at the bottom of the paramecium. You're going to start to see some material flowing out of the paramecium. So the way that it does that is by fusing this big vesicle with the cell membrane and opening it up to the outside environment and releasing those materials. So again, check this out. So down there at the bottom, we're going to be able to actually see that paramecium releasing all of those materials out into the external environment. How cool is that? An actual living cell doing exocytosis. All right. So again, active transport, which is our last little bit of information that we need to know. It requires energy, which is totally different from passive transport. Okay. Passive transport, no energy. Active transport requires energy. Okay. Materials in active transport move from an area of lower concentration to an area of higher concentration. You're trying to row that canoe back against the flow of the river, the current of the river. It's going to take a lot of energy to do that versus passive transport where you're just flowing from high to low. No energy, you can just flow in your canoe down the river. And then the other thing is that active transport is going to occur via proteins or by the cell physically pinching off part of its cell membrane. All right, so that's active transport. Whereas passive transport, like for diffusion, we just had materials moving directly across the phospholipid bilayer. Okay. For facilitated diffusion, we did have a protein or proteins that were used, but it was still passive. And then osmosis is the movement of water passively. All right. So that's active transport. All right. That's our recorded lecture for the day. Let me please remind you to make sure to go to Schoology. All right. Complete. Let me actually show you that. Okay, so go to Schoology, go to your Unit 3 materials, and make sure that we complete the active transport recorded lecture discussion, and then get started on the cell transport practice and review questions. The active transport recorded lecture discussion is due by the end of the day today. The cell transport practice and review questions are due by the next class period. So make sure that you look at the weekly agenda to figure out what when things are due and what you need to be working on. As always, reach out if you have questions. I'm here to help you. I will do whatever I can to make sure that we are all good. All right, that concludes our recorded lecture. I miss you guys like crazy. I can't wait to get back into the classroom and see you again. But keep up the good work. All right, all of my classes, 2nd, 4th, 6th, and 7th. Keep up the good work, guys. Please, please, please reach out and let me know if you need any help. All right, take care. I'll see you guys very soon.